All right. Welcome, everyone. It is Tuesday. Tuesday. I figured out the days are again all of a sudden. Uh, Welcoming back Ken Patterson from PAX8. Ken was on with us a few months ago, so it was nice to be able to bring him back in as we're circling the MSP channel and trying to kind of feel our way through things as we continue through 2020, the year that will hopefully be behind us at some point. How you doing, Ken?
Good. How are you? Yeah, it could be 2022 before this year's over, but we're working on it.
I'm sure. I'm sure there are scripts being written on this whole thing, like 5 different ways. So you're based out of Boston. For everyone that wasn't didn't watch the first one, and we've been talking back and forth pretty regularly. It seems like Boston is kind of clearing up, right, Ken?
Yeah. I mean, our governor, good or bad, it has taken a slower approach. So we've been behind the rest of the country in the phases, and I guess in some extent that's helping because we're not at the same space as some of these other states. And the other states are getting hit hard, but I still, we've talked about this a number of times. It's so hard to know what's true. And when you look at the numbers, when you know that, testing has increased by 4 times. So of course you're going to see more cases. So, I read it by what I see, not what I hear. I don't know the rest of the country because we're not, out there, but here, it's funny because initially when we were talking about how we were shut down, there was a lot of cases here, even locally in my little town. I'm just north of Boston. We had a bunch of family friends get it, and some were just quarantined for 2 weeks and had no symptoms. And then we had one friend who was on the news. He was on a ventilator. He went through the whole thing. He was an older, my age, had some underlying conditions, but he did survive it and come out the other side and had a new appreciation for it from when it started. But listen, I don't think anybody can deny it's real. It's just how far, how deep it's going with the parts of the country, and just take the precautions. Wear a mask when you need to wear a mask. Wash your hands, which is something that shouldn't take a pandemic to teach us to wash our hands. But
well, we've all seen how many airport bathrooms people walk out of without washing your hands, Ken. I mean, we've all been
yes.
that
And how about the the bar? You come out of the bar restroom, and someone reaches their hand into one of those jars of candy or jars of nuts or something after they just walked out of it. Oh, please, don't get me started with that stuff.
Yeah, I think everybody just needs to do what we were supposed to be doing in the first place, and we're probably better off, right?
Yeah, it's obviously it's going to help. Yeah, and I had this thing that I did already, so it's kind of interesting. With all the travel that we've done, last year at least, what we were doing for traveling, my routine changed when I learned a couple new tricks, and I've always had hand sanitizer on every plane trip, obviously. I don't go crazy washing everything down, or maybe we should now, but I would put it on my hands as I'm getting on, and I would put it under my nose. And I just thought it was just an extra. I thought it was actually not going to work, but it actually has worked for me. I've not all of last year I didn't get sick on a plane.
That's so just awesome. So basically, like kind of like conditioned yourself not to take your hands and put them near your face, kind of thing.
Right. Exactly. So yeah, last year, because I was noticing I was getting sick when I started flying the year before when it first started, and I was getting on planes quite a bit. So yeah, that little bit helped, and now we're seeing. I did you see the I don't know if it was an airline saying now you're going to need to wear a face shield and a mask.
I didn't hear that one. I heard
I think it's Qatar Airlines. I just thought of it.
Qatar,
yep. Yeah, Qatar. Yeah, they're doing they're going to hand out shields, and they're going to give you a kit.
Wow. I mean, they're taking it up a notch. I mean, the only place I've seen the shield is like at delis and restaurants, right, where they're actually handling food and they don't have the, kind of like the subway kind of glass in front of you. So that kind of made sense. Never to anyone wearing the shield just walking around kind of thing. And I think as it's getting hotter, it's just harder to deal with the face covering, right? For some people, especially if they're outside a lot. So one of the things, Ken, that I don't think we touched on the first time was kind of your background. I don't think a lot of people that don't know you on a kind of first name, cell phone basis know your kind of pre PAX8 history. So you mind sharing like your professional history with the webcast here?
Not at all. I mean, I wouldn't exactly call it professional. No, just, yeah, professional. Yeah, so I mean, I started out. I mean, if we want to roll all the way back, kind of interestingly enough, I started out in high school in electronics, which you would think would have springboarded me right into computers back in the day. But because of where I grew up in a bad neighborhood and the things that we did, I was all about making the most money. So I kind of scammed my way through high school working. I should have been cleaning pagers for $5 an hour. Instead, I was working at an auto dealership, saying that I was fixing radios when I really wasn't, but I was making more money. And so my early lesson, so kids, don't do that, because it didn't work out. That was a big chunk of time out of my life that I didn't have. And so later on in life, being in the auto business, finding out that it wasn't a really good business long-term for what I was doing, my wife actually pushed me back into school. She literally signed me up for school without telling me. And I had like 2 weeks. She's like, let's go visit your school you're going to be going to. And I'm like, what? So I literally went back to school because my wife decided that, she knew it wasn't working out. I went back to an electronics based school, but learned all of it again, digital, audio. I was fixing VCRs, the whole thing. And computers were a part of it. I had a little monochrome monitor and, I think I had maybe not even a gig of RAM. I think it was 512 of RAM or whatever it was, cheap little computer that I was learning on. And from there, I sprung into Fidelity Investments job that fell in my lap that started as 1 day a week, believe it or not, and then bloomed into a full-time job where all of a sudden, this computer stuff made sense to me, like networking made sense to me. And I really got into Microsoft specifically, even though Novell at the time was the big thing. And I had learned Windows 95 before it even came out. I got a hold of it through Fidelity and this whole thing and started learning how to do networking. And it was the strangest metamorphosis. My brother lived with me when we were younger and he knew computers. I had no idea what he was doing. Really, I had no idea so I wasn't a right out of high school computer guy nerd that knew all this stuff. It came to me later. And then when it came to me, it hit me like a truck. It was like I knew it. It was the strangest thing. I knew how things worked, how they connected. I wasn't a very good teacher because I was like, what do you mean? It goes, this is how it works. It does this and it connects to, and I wasn't a good teacher because of that. It just came naturally. And so from Fidelity Investments, I ended up landing a job at a small break fix mom and pop company. And, talked my way into the job, talked my way into, into learning, doing more with them. I actually converted their whole entire network from Novell to Microsoft without them knowing. Big risk. And one of the owners, one of the meaner owners came to me and said, hey, what's been going on? My development side of the business is screaming. Everything's working really great. And it was because I moved them off their Novell to this NT network. And I thought he was going to fire me, but he was like, wow, this is great. We started to do more. I eventually got my the certification. I was actually the first person in little old Lynn, Massachusetts to get certified at a testing center for NT 4.0. The lady actually hugged me because everybody was failing, and I failed it twice too, by the way. It wasn't an easy test. It was a very crazy test. The instructor at Microsoft told me you have a better chance of passing the bar exam. That's how crazy it is. Yeah, the tests they would reactivate. So if you got one wrong, the next question would rotate to more questions about that subject. It was a very strange testing process. So I passed the test eventually, got a big promotion, took our company into being a Microsoft partner. That's the company. So that company, we went from break fix to what I would like to say we called MSP, but we didn't. It was before MSP, but we were a little bit ahead of the game. We signed on with ConnectWise before I think they had under 100 companies doing the ConnectWise thing for using it as a PSA tool. I started to learn about precious metals and I started offering the bronze, silver, gold packages, right? And we were doing this I think it was 2001 or 2 or something like that. Of course, so long ago, my brain is fading, but it was pretty early on in the game. And yeah, from there, things just kind of took off. Once we realized we could do this managed service thing separate from the break fix and running around putting fires out, things really took off for us. And, you know, again, I'd like to say I can take credit for all the decisions, but it was also a ton of mistakes that I made and learned from. And then one of the best decisions I ever made was getting involved with events and meeting other MSPs around the country and learning more about how business is done in that, you know, in the world around us, all the way around the country, and stop looking at people as competition and start realizing that they're not competition. There's plenty of business, right?
I call it castle and moat mentality, man.
Yes, exactly. And instead, it should be more about what do we call it? Co-opetition, right? That was a term that came up a couple times on the calls. So, you know, we got really good at that. We started to explode. I started to learn along the way. Like I said, we made some pretty big mistakes, like everybody, but we didn't let those hold us back. That particular company, we went from, when I started with them, I think we were at 350,000 a year, maybe between 350 and 500,000 a year, maybe. When we sold, I think we were around 5 million. So basically what happened, we had a few niches that I wish we did better, but we had some pretty cool niches in the corrections industry that our development team wrote, and they all split up and got divided up before the sale of the company. So it wasn't as lucrative as it should have been from that standpoint. And
I was going to say,
you know,
corrections is an interesting angle. I don't know if anyone super duper concentrates on it.
Yeah, I can tell you a whole other story about how we got into corrections. I can tell you that it circles around. You know how Morgan Freeman always plays a forensic psychologist in the movies? Well, his character is based off of the man who got us into corrections.
Oh, that's cool.
Some pretty interesting stories there. You have to hit me up for that one. I'll tell you that story. But so we got into corrections through a side connection, and then what we did is we wrote packages that managed the inmates' money and the food and stuff inside the canteen. We were linked directly with Canteen Corporation at the time, and they were a competitor of Aramark. I think Aramark owns Canteen now. So those types of things were pretty good. We got to a certain point. I can give you guys some crazy advice on what not to do when you're bringing on partners or you're bringing on people that you think are going to help your business, because we failed miserably in that category. And that's what caused the end result to not be so lucrative when we sold the company. But, you know, I wouldn't change anything down the road. It wouldn't have got me to where I am now. After we sold that company, I went out and just started consulting with companies, you know, becoming their VP of operations or director of operations, and just tried to help MSPs grow their business. And I've had some success. I've had some failures with that. Sometimes it was me learning. Sometimes it was a lack of, you know, you get into a situation and they don't listen to your advice, right? And so it's either, I blame myself for that in some cases. In some cases, you know, there's no budging. Some, you know, people, they want you to come in and fix the business, but they don't really want to make a change and do that. So I had a couple of, you know, that going back and forth. And then when this opportunity for PAX8 came up, which I was using PAX8 at the last companies I was working with, I just found something different. It was just a whole different philosophy of what they were doing, how they were doing it. And then the fact that they would take a schmo like me on and, you know, no sales commission. No, I'm not sales driven in any way, shape, or form. They only wanted me to help them better bridge the gap between PAX8 and the partners and the vendors in a way that only someone who's been an MSP could do. So that's kind of the quick and dirty.
No, hey, that was great. I don't think you've ever spelled it out that way, at least around me. I mean, so you really had to like kind of fall back into technology because your wife kind of just, you know, threw you a curveball, which is interesting enough. And then you went through a sale, you did a bunch of consulting through several different organizations. So you saw the good, the bad, the ugly, the personalities, the trench, you know, war, if you would. I mean, so before we get too far into like the current ebb and flow of what's happening now, why don't you give everybody a few tips on, like you said, there are a couple tips on who not to partner with if you're, you know, trying to bring people into your business. And then maybe a couple on the things that you saw as you were consulting with MSPs that just crushed these guys, right? Prevented them from actually succeeding.
Right. Well, I mean, from a standpoint of partnering, and I think anybody who's done a merger and acquisition can say this as well. You really have to do your homework. It's not just about the business acumen. It's not just about the technical acumen. Whatever it is, whatever the reason is you're bringing these people in, remember there's also there's a personal side of this when you get merged together. And you have to make sure that your cultures match, right? Don't just think about you. Think about the people in your organization that you want to take care of. And I know a lot of us, believe me, I would do the same thing. I think I'm thinking about my people when I'm making the decisions, but if I take a step back, I wasn't in some cases. Like I wasn't doing it the proper way. So I think you have to take a step back, think about your people, think about your culture, and you want that culture to survive because clearly that culture is what got you to where you are, where you're making these decisions. And do a little bit more digging into the people you're bringing on board. Obviously, I'm not the type of person that goes around bashing, so I won't go into details. But we had over the years, I've had some guys come in that we thought we were going to partner with, that we thought were, we were making some smart decisions based on just the above board facts, and didn't actually talk to people they worked with in the past, people who they approached that turned them down. None of that came into a factor. And these are things I learned. You should be finding out why other people are turning them down. What is the reason behind it? What things did they find? And then I went a little bit deeper and didn't do before. Now I do this. Now I go look at people they've worked with in the past. And it doesn't matter if they worked for them, with them. Get an idea of the person, what they are like to work with. When the crap hits the fan, what are they like? Because that's where separation is going to happen when you bring people in like that. And believe me, as MSPs, we know that hits the fan almost every day, right? So you want to make sure you're with the right people. You're partnering with the right people when doing stuff like that. As far as gotchas, the biggest thing is know how to get out of your own way. If you really want to get successful and be successful, get out of your own way. Let somebody help you. And again, you still have to do the background check, make sure everybody who's worked with them has had success, and there's personality, your personalities are going to jive, and they don't have to be exactly the same either. I found that different personalities can sometimes be the secret to success. An example I can give you is my current situation, at PAX8. I work for Jen Bodell, right? Me and Jen Bodell have completely very, very different personalities, but it's what makes us great. It's what makes us cohesive. And we do some pretty cool things back and forth because I know the things that she does and how great she knows the things that I'm good at. And we work with each other to make each other better in those areas that we're not. So even as early as now, I'm learning these types of things, right? So it doesn't have to be an exact match, but you have to make sure that you can mesh and you can cross over and learn from each other. But the big thing is get out of your own way. You have to be able to step back. There's a reason why you're at a crossroad. There's a reason why there's a hurdle that you can't get over. Be open to the idea that something new could change that. And there's a slew of things we could go over. But again, some of the stuff is still fresh. And I wouldn't want to, make anybody feel like it's one particular situation that I'm talking about. But you have to be willing to step outside yourself and say, okay, I haven't been able to do this myself, and there's a reason why I'm bringing somebody in. This is why I'm having them come in and work with us. Whether we're partnering, whether we're acquiring, and we're bringing their skill set in. But you have to, if you're going to do that and go through all that trouble, you better make sure that you're willing to give up a little bit of something. And also be smart enough to know when you don't. Because I know there's some partners that we're both friends with that has told me, I couldn't do an acquisition because I would never want to give up what I do. How I run things. And in his case, it works. They're successful. So he's like, I'm not going to, if it's not broke, don't try to fix it. That's his thing.
But Ken, I've seen it. People just get to a point where they're burnt. I mean, they're burnout mode. And at that point, like, is that rock bottom where is that what it takes to finally say, I just can't do it by myself anymore? Like, there's got to be some ebb and flow, no?
Yeah, and you're right. Sometimes unfortunately, that's the case. And look, it doesn't take much to get burned out in this industry, right? Just as well as anybody, it's a tough industry to be in. We're constantly spinning 17 plates at one time and, trying to be that dancing bear, all while, dancing on a ball, right? It's a lot to take in. But remember, a lot of those things, you have to decide, are these things that I should be working on or should I delegate? And are there parts of this that I would never even be able to do? Just because I'm CEO doesn't mean that I'm really a CEO. We all know this. And this has happened at all levels of business. We've seen this in vendors. We've seen this at other MSPs. We've seen it everywhere, right? There's a CEO and they're doing a great job, but they're not really a CEO. Even in the smaller MSPs, you're the president of the company, but if you can't carry out president-like tasks because you're buried in the weeds, or you don't have the knowledge and you want to get the help, you're going to get that help. You have to make sure that you trust the person to do that stuff, right? And you still have to have your checks and balances. So it's not easy. You can't just say, oh, I'm going to hand it all over to this guy, right? You have to know that they fit and make sure they fit with your culture too. Introduce them to the team before anything even happens. Make sure the team gets a good feel. Your team are going to be a good gauge for that too, right? The people that work for you are going to be a good metric for, okay, is this person going to work out? You know, they're going to come to you and say, hey, I really like this person.
So did you do a lot more eyeball testing, or did you actually do things like DISC and personality tests and like the more formal stuff?
Oh, I've done them all. And you know where I fall on the DISC model. So I think you and I are in the same section. I took a class because I didn't want to DISC somebody unless I understood the whole thing. So I took a class on how to distribute DISC and then also how to take the DISC. So we did that whole thing, you know, the red, yellow, red, green. I forget the colors, and then they've changed it. Yeah.
I think it's yellow, it's purple, red, green, blue, or something like that.
Something like that. It was, so I remember I took the course. Clearly I wasn't a very good student because I can't remember all the colors. I took the class. I did both sides of it, it gave me a better understanding of what they're looking for and how you can't just judge based on where they fall in the DISC model, but you have to match it up with the right job. I have done the DISC, but honestly, I found, look, nowadays you got to do a background check. You have to. Yeah. I don't know. There's no way to gauge that part of it. Also, I still do believe in giving people a second chance. I was a second chance kid. You know, I didn't come from any type of great background where I was, launched into this. Nobody handed anything down to me. If you looked at my background when I was younger, you might not hire me, right? Just because of the things I did, where I grew up and that type of stuff. I do believe people deserve a second chance, but I also believe you have to do some kind of background check to know what's going on in people's backgrounds, what's happened, how long ago it happened. And then secondly, I use my gut. I really feel like I've had a pretty good track record with doing these things, but you also should look at your track record, right? I mean, I know where I'm weak. I have been weak with, we've had people in my past where I've given too much and they took too much of my time, and then they ended up leaving anyways, and it can drain you, right? You have to know also when that time is to cut somebody off and understand it's the business first. Yes, you don't want to just fire somebody, but you can also take a real beating in a number of different levels when you have a bad employee. It goes right back to that culture I was talking about, right? They can poison your whole entire room. Yeah, exactly. So I've done it all from that standpoint. I've done the DISC. I have done the background check, and I feel like the mix, plus really getting to know, if you've built your culture and it's really solid, then you can have that kind of gut check, and use your employees too. When you bring somebody in, the first thing you should do is introduce them to some key people, let them have a conversation, leave them in a room for a few minutes. And that way, when the guy says, boy, I can't wait to fake my way onto this one or whatever, your employee will tell you, you might be able to avoid some pitfalls that way. But I've done a lot with interns back in the day. I hired a lot of interns. One of the coolest things I've ever done, one of the proudest things I can say I've done is, I'm pretty sure I'm still at a pretty high number. I'm at about 80 or 90% of the interns that I've hired over the years are now 6-figure engineers somewhere.
Wow.
And these were kids that, and the cool thing is, in most cases, I hired them when they were 15 years old or somewhere around that age, out of high school, doing intern type things, right? And some of the kids were project kids. Some of the kids were, whatever they were, but they were hard workers. They already got a chance because they were interns. They came in and saw what the life was like. I didn't make it easy on them. I didn't blow any smoke. I told them straight up, this is the hardest job you're ever going to have. You can go to a bank and it might be easier to do IT. You can go here and do this. Here, it's going to be something different every day. And you got to keep a straight face on. You can't, your emotions can't get in the way. And for the most part, they appreciated my candor, being honest with them and saying, this isn't Disney World. You're not walking into this great, easy job, but I believe it's the most rewarding when you get to the other side. And I bet I got pretty lucky with, in some cases, I guess, but a lot of them I still talk to, and they're all doing pretty well. At the last company, the one that bought our MSP, there's a lot of them still working there, and they're doing well. That company is doing, oh God, what's the number? I don't want to do it injustice, or I think they're doing about 20 million in Microsoft revenue a month.
Wow.
So I'll attribute that to my people. But
I mean, listen, there's other stuff other than just Microsoft revenue, but if it's just Microsoft revenue, that's a great base foundation, right?
Oh, I'm sorry. No, 20 is the law. It's 1.67 million a month in Microsoft revenue. That's right. That's what it is. See, you get me all. 1.67 is still a good amount per month.
That's still awesome, right?
Imagine
how many machines, yeah.
So these guys are, some of them are working there, some of them are spread out. But if you ask me, what's the single greatest? Was it, getting to sell? Was it growing these companies? It was growing these people. These human beings that maybe would have not gotten that chance somewhere else, but they got it with me, and then they ended up taking advantage of it and growing into other positions. Some of these guys are, one of the kids, it's funny, one of the kids, he wasn't super young when he joined us, but he was super cocky, and he came in and he pissed everybody off at my company, like right off first day. And I had people coming to me, you need to fire this kid. I'm like, look, everybody deserves a chance. I think the kid's just nervous, so he's overdoing it. He's telling everybody how great he is because he's nervous. Sure enough, broke the kid down, got him into a certain place, and now at this company, he's I think he's director of customer service or something. Like, so he went from that to this position where he's actually making sure that customer relations are good. So sometimes you can see a little bit more in someone, push them, and obviously give them enough rope, right? You don't want to let them go to a point where it's never going to work out, and be honest with them. Tell them, hey, look, this just isn't working out. I think that you probably have some skill set to maybe do it in other areas, but from an MSP perspective, I just don't think you have the mindset for this, right? It's all about being honest on both ends of it. The front end, letting them know it's not easy, and then when it comes to the point where they're just not handling it, being honest with them at that point as well.
No, listen, I think this whole conversation gets really lost, right? We're all about technology and the next thing, cloud security, and then you forget that there's actual people, feelings, opinions, there's personal things that happen in between, right? And life's not flat, it's not black and white. So it's really interesting, as we all kind of grow through it. And, we were coming out of 2019 where basically there was 10 to 1, right? For every 10 positions, there was only one applicant available, right, to fill them. Obviously things are different now. Everybody knows what we just went through. So there's a little bit more flexibility there, but give the second chance thing is for real. And, you just got to be willing to put the time investment in, right, Ken? I think that's part of the problem, that everybody's so busy running around trying to put the fire out in some case, that they forget that, they need to invest time back in their team.
Well, you want that culture to be whatever way you want it to be, right? But in most cases, we're all about the people, I think. I think people first organizations are the ones that explode. Those are the ones where the people will go through a wall for you, right? So show a little, be human to the people that work for you, and show them that you're the same as them. You're going through some of the same things, and you want to understand what they're going through. Like, take a moment to say, hey, what's going on? How's things going with you? It doesn't take very long, but I'll tell you, it goes very far. I've had people tell me in the past, man, this morning when you asked me, I was just about ready to just quit. I was done, and you actually showed me that you had some questions, and then, came in my office, we had a conversation, and sure enough, it was something small that was just irritating them. But if you don't take a few seconds to have that conversation, you never know, right? And you got to have, and like I said, I know what it's like to have your hair on fire. Like I said, I was blinded by that as well and not paying attention to something. Or your head, right? Your head on fire. How's that? Yeah, I definitely could see how it happens. I just think everybody needs to start taking a step back and pay attention to those little things, because it's your team that are going to get you to that next level.
For sure. So appreciate that background. I love it. I think a lot of people probably haven't heard your idea and perception and feeling going through all of that. I'm sure there's a lot more there, and we'll dig into stories later. So here we are. You've been doing twice a week community calls with PAX8. You've talked to a ton of guys out there in the trench. You've been working, trying to help people where you can or suggest things as you can. Like, as it stands today, do you think, based on everyone you've talked to and what your perception is right now, that people are getting by? Is it worse than we thought it was? Is it better than we thought it was? Like, what's the general gist of feeling out there?
So there's levels, right? And you know my mentality, just like when I give someone advice, this is not the silver bullet. There is no silver bullet, right? Everybody's different. You want to take a nugget from everything we all say and learn from it and use it in your case. That's what you got to do. Same here. I don't think there's any one, even with all the people I've talked to, I don't think there's any one story that signifies, hey, we're out of this, right? You know, we have partners, you've been on the calls. We have a partner that all the marketing he did at the beginning of this was education, education, education. And then 2 weeks ago, he got hit with 10 RFPs in the states that are coming, you know, going into the phases where they're coming back to work, because those businesses are reevaluating their IT because it wasn't doing well during this. They didn't take care of them. They didn't nurture them while this was all happening. And then we have guys who are in different areas where it's starting to take hold right now, where the initial cash was cash from previously that started to help them out. Then they got PPP, some didn't. And then now all of a sudden is where the rubber hits the road and some of that stuff's dried up. So it's kind of a mix from a standpoint of, you know, what we'll be doing, or if it's better, if things are getting better. From the other perspective, man, I wish I had a magic ball to be able to say that, because there's no, you know, I talked to somebody who 2 weeks ago would have said, oh man, things are going great. We're going to be, you know, health-wise, this thing's going to be over. And I just talked to him, you know, a day or so ago, and he's like, man, this is scary. It's hitting closer to home. I got relatives, you know, that are, you know, getting this COVID thing. And so, you know, as we all agree, you know, they're doing more testing, so we're going to have more numbers. So I don't necessarily follow that trend. I did see a graphic a couple of days ago. You might have seen it too, where the death count is not as high as they thought it was going to be, which is a good positive thing. But we know the COVID is real, and we know that it's happening, and where people are being a bit irresponsible, I'm sure it's going to probably get a little worse. But man, I wish I could tell you that we're going to be coming back to getting on the road and doing more with the shows and those types of things, because I still believe that's the best way for MSPs to work together and get to know each other's business. And just, you know, that personal touch is missing right now. I think we're all getting zoomed out. People are getting sick of the Zoom calls, although it is one of the cool things that came out of this, is because we would never have done this type of stuff before as much. We wouldn't have done the calls. And I want to reiterate, the Tuesday, Thursday calls is not a PAX8 thing. They just allowed me the platform, but it's actually all about the community. That's just an open community thing. So, and again, that's one of the reasons why I made that move, that shift from being, you know, 20 plus years MSP space to going over to the dark side, right? These guys got it, right? The dark side. These guys got it, and I was super impressed by everything they did. And now it's been, oh my God, George, we're going to be coming up on 2 years, which is crazy to think about. And they still, man. Yeah, and it's still, the honeymoon is not over. It's still, they're delivering on everything that I've asked and more, and we're just doing some really cool things. So just wanted to point that part out from the call piece. Yeah, it's not a PAX8 thing. I don't want anybody to feel like they can't get on that call. It's for vendors. It's for anybody in the IT and MSP community who wants to jump on, ask a question, listen, whatever it may be. We want to encourage you guys to jump on and be a part of it. And George is one of the big pieces of that.
Yeah, I love listening to see how things are going. So one of the things that seems super clear to me of of the couple of last few weeks is that there seems to be this idea that a framework is missing in terms of what should be the benchmark when it comes to security first or security focus. I'm not saying MSSP versus MSP. Right. I'm just saying, what is the best practice benchmarking for what you should be doing if security is important to you? So maybe, how's that? I think there's something forming around that thought. Tell me a little bit more.
Well, yeah, I mean, so obviously, PAX8 is heavily involved in security, right? We do a lot with cloud. We're starting to hold the vendors to a higher standard, especially with everything changing, right? But at the same time, you don't want to limit it to, having only 4 vendors because they're not all quite there yet, right? For some of these standards. But from a MSP perspective, what we're trying to do is bring together security-minded MSPs to come up with some kind of regulation or framework we can make it so we're self-regulated before the government steps in, like we talked about the Louisiana piece that came up. That's all well and good, but what we're talking about is leaning more towards, if I could use Compliancy Group, how they created a seal, and that seal has become the standard. I just saw our PSA tool Synchro got certified.
I saw HIPAA, that.
Right,
like
that's pretty right. So that's a pretty cool thing, and that's what we want to do for the MSPs, because we've joked about this. And I can use you, right? Your hairdresser has a license up on the wall, right? But we don't.
For sure.
Right? MSPs don't, and that's the main thing. Is there's nothing to say. And listen, I'll use the term because it's still out there. A trunk slammer. Someone can just say, "Hey, I do IT because I worked at IBM for 20 years. Hang my shingle. I'm now an MSP." And we've all seen the negative ramifications that can have, right? As MSPs, we run up against them in the past. Someone says, "Oh, I can get it from these guys for much less." We still hold that ground of, "Hey, we're not going to drop our prices for for that. We are who we are, and this is there's a reason why we offer it for that price. It's a value, right?" So from that standpoint, we're trying to figure out what that means. Hey, look, and you're right, MSSP is a whole different ball game, but we want to also show people what that means, right? We want to, because there's a lot of MSPs out there that are saying, "I'm working towards my MSSP," but they don't know what it takes to get there. We want to lay that framework down. We want to be able to show, here's what it takes to get to your MSSP, and this is what it takes to get to security-focused MSP. And oh, by the way, there are still standards for being an MSP, right?
Yeah.
You can't just go out and say you're an MSP. You have to have proper tools. So we're trying to work on that with the MSPs, the ones that know, the more mature. And again, I think this gets tossed around a lot, and people should understand maturity does not equal dollar amount. Maturity means you understand where your stack is and how you sell your stack. And it's a solution. You're not selling a product. Maturity is based on those types of things, the way that you roll it out, where your stack is, how you're doing it, and is your house in order, right? Because we know, I was the same way. When I was out selling stuff, I was selling stuff that I didn't even have in place at the time, right? The cobbler's son has no shoes mentality. That can't happen in this day and age. You have to take care of your house first. Then that's what you're going to do to take care of the partners. And by the way, let them know that. Be honest with them. Because when you're honest they're going to find out anyways, right? That's the big thing. The news is reporting all these hacks that MSPs are being hacked. At what point are our customers going to go, "My MSP's being hacked"? Well, they're the ones supposed to be protecting me. It's going to affect our liability, how we look in their eyes, if we're not already telling them, "Yeah, we're being hacked too. As a matter of fact, we're being hacked harder than you." So the stuff that we're putting in place to protect us is also what we're recommending you put in place to protect you. Now you guys are sharing that, right? You have a little bit more of a bond with them, as opposed to being the guy that just says, "You need to do this, and this is why." Yeah. I think that's a big separator. So yeah, being able to say, this is what you are. You're a break fix. If you don't have step 1, you're a break fix. If you get to step 1 and 2, okay, now you can call yourself an MSP. If you want to get to MSP, security-focused MSP, you got to have things like MFA, DNS filtering, all those things wrapped into your stack, and it has to be fully functional internally as well as for all your clients.
No, fair enough. I mean, so It sounds like that's like beginning infancy, but there's been enough conversation that these guys are getting together to start this conversation, right? Because
Yes.
back to what you just referenced, right? You know, we're still in a position, you know, our friend Dave Sobel, I know Larry from 2112 group jumped
Yeah,
on last
that
week.
was an
We're
interesting
still in a
conversation.
position. Yeah, no, it was a very entertaining one. It was literally like back to back, which helped, you know, expand what we started on. We're still in a good position to like build what should be our own policing before somebody else comes in and kicks down the door, right?
Right, and at the very least, smart business owners will have someplace to turn as opposed to just looking up Billy Bob in the yellow pages. This way,
Yeah.
when they say, it's like with the Microsoft certifications back in the day, they didn't necessarily mean anything because we had a lot of paper tigers, but at the same time, the people that got them took the time to get them, and businesses would say, oh, you don't have this Microsoft certification? I got to think about that. I ran into that quite a amount of times. When I had my certification, it made a big difference to a lot of the bigger businesses, you know, the ones that were regulated and wanted to have a little bit more. They asked those questions. Now, more than ever, every business needs to be regulated. We all have to be protected against what's going to happen. I forget, someone brought it up the other day. It's like, if you don't think that 90% of us are going to be hacked by the end of next year, you're wrong. It's not a matter of if, it's when. So what are we doing to prevent that, or at least limit that? And so now that everybody has to do it, it's a whole different ballgame. And these guys that are just coming out and trying to make money off of businesses saying that they do IT work and leaving them in the lurches. I mean, I bet you have a ton of horror stories. I've had stories where I went to places where the company would say to me, I got ransomware. I need to get my backup back. And I went to my MSP and he can't help me. He won't even call me back. And then I go, look, the guy's not an MSP. There's a one-man shop who, by the way, one-man shops are great if you're doing it right. He was a one-man shop who wasn't doing it right. And he also had no backups for them for the last 6 months. So this guy gets ransomware. He's a small law firm. His life is over. Now, because of who I am and how much, I care about that stuff, I spent 48 hours sifting through a whole bunch of stuff that I did get from him and ended up getting about, I think I got all the way up to within 8 months of his data back, 12 years worth of information back for him. It wasn't easy. It wasn't fun, but, I put the time into it because as an MSP, that's the first thing. You have to care about these people. You have to care about their business and really want to help them. It's not about making money off of them because that's transparent and it never works.
How much are you seeing, collaboration happening between separate, like we said at the beginning, castle mentality versus co-opetition or just community, whatever you want to call it? Are you feeling like you're seeing a lot more of that now than you did last year based on the current circumstances, or are people still trying to hammer at this on their own?
I think it's a mix. If we can get through to people watching this, I would say, find the help, but make sure you're talking to the right people. Reach out to George, reach out to me. We can tell you people who are trustworthy. People in our circle don't want to look bad because we have, we're out there where we can talk about that. I've seen it. I've seen a lot of it. It has definitely increased a bit, which is good. The MSPs that want to be MSSPs, when you realize what it takes, find an MSSP to work with. They don't want your job and you can't do theirs. Find a good one that makes sense, and that will help you get that level of business if you want to go there. There's also reasons to not ever be an MSSP. For some of the businesses you're working on, you may not need that. Security first, right? We talk about that. And I think every MSP should be security first now. So I'm seeing a mix of it. We've had great relationship with partners, so we've connected some MSPs across the country many times, and they work together, and you find, oh wow, it really does work. And one thing about me that that not everybody may know is I do not give a recommendation unless I 100% know it's going to work out. It's trustworthy. My reputation's on the line because I've been doing this. When I was an MSP, I've made so many connections. That's why I know as many people as I do, is because I can feel confident. Someone asked me a question, call George at BVoIP, right? I can say that 1,000 times. I'm saying it live here. George didn't pay me to do that. That's just that's a normal function of knowing somebody for long enough and knowing their business and realizing that it's trustworthy. Over the last year, I've connected a bunch of MSPs that their footprint didn't get to a certain location, but they were going to lose the business if they didn't get business in another state. Very comfortably referred them to MSPs that are on our call, and those guys both worked out. They got to keep this large account. The company that was in the other state that got the referral now has a couple extra $1,000 a month in recurring revenue, and those are easy.
That's a win-win.
It's a win-win. When you can expand your footprint by just making a connection, it's a win-win. And it's mailbox money because you're not down there doing any other work. You're just collecting money off of a relationship.
That's a beautiful thing. I feel like people fear if they open up the door just a little bit, all of a sudden, customers will start, sneaking through the back door, or they'll lose business, or they'll have an engineer that somehow went over to somewhere else. Like, it's this
it could
fear.
Happen. It could happen.
Still happen.
It could happen, sure. But if you're doing it the right way and you're finding the right connections, it won't happen. I mean, we've had some of the MSP people that we know have gone even above and beyond. We've had MSPs, and they've done it. They've talked about it on the call. We got guys who say, "Oh yeah," he goes, "I had someone come to me and say, oh, I'm using the other guy here in the group," and I was like, "Well, if it's about price, forget it." And I can't imagine those guys are falling down on their face. So I'm not sure why you're reaching out. And the guy actually said, "Well, I just had to get some bids," and he's like, "Well, I wouldn't take your business. I know those guys are reputable, and they're worth doing it." Imagine that. But that's about ethics, right? That's about, I believe that's where karma comes into play, and you do the right thing and do good things will happen. So I 100% believe in that part of it. I mean, there are other parts where I feel like karma is BS, but here in business, when you do the right thing, it does come back.
I feel like that code of ethics is part of that foundational component that we've been talking about, right? Like, hey, what's a break fix? What's an MSP? What's an MSSP? What's security focused? I feel like the foundation is, hey, what's right and what's wrong? You think that this is straightforward, but there's a lot of gray out there, Ken. I mean, we've all heard horror stories.
I agree. Well, and it's Peter Melby from Greystone has that pact, the MSP pack that he has MSPs joining on and signing, saying, "I will do these things." It's really, really cool. I wish I had it more front of mind because I would have said it. Maybe we could post it in the chat later or something or whatever, or post it to the video when you guys post it online. But that's a great start. That's like an initiative saying, hey, look, if you're really willing to say, I will do these things ethically, it does put you a step above, right? And it gives you that, okay, these guys are signing up for this. I forget, man, it's going to kill me, George, that I don't have that on the top.
We'll find it. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, we've had a lot of the partners on our call joined up when they met him, and he explained it. And he's a guy who has a very mature MSP, and all he wants to do is give back. He wants to help, and he thought that this was one way to help to raise the bar, like we're trying to do from a higher level, is to be able to say, hey, this is something you should be. These are some guidelines you should be holding yourself to, ethical standards you should be holding yourself to, if you really want to call yourself an MSP. And I think this is where it's all headed. You got folks like CompTIA going out to legislature and trying to make sure that, we already found out that MSPs are essential, right?
Yep.
But are we more essential than the power company? And that's the next thing to happen, because you think about it, yes, power is pretty good, but without what we do, power is useless. You're going to have some lights, that's it, right? So I truly believe when all this ties together, you're going to see that wave come in. And I hope that most MSPs that aren't there, that want to be there, don't give up. They just, they follow it. We have that walk, crawl, run mentality that applies here. Take your time and get there, but make sure you're getting the resources and you're talking to people about how to do it. And I do truly believe the ones that don't care and don't want to do it will get scraped off. They won't make it. They won't survive.
There's always that cycle right at the bottom we're trying to fix. So there were a couple of good things that came out of the calls in terms of, maybe, Matt Lee's story is a good one. I don't know if we can share that one, but they went through the Microsoft. Are we good? Can we tell this story? Are we good?
Which one? The backup one or the?
Yeah, the email thing, the email backup.
Yeah, you just no products. We'll just say, yeah, it was the email. He realized that the email was not being backed up. Microsoft put out an article on it stating that you need third-party backup. And so what they did as a company at the time, they were They were not merged yet with Iconic. They would choose. And so they went out to their customer base and they just sent out an email that stated, Microsoft states this, your inboxes, your everything that you have in Outlook is not being backed up. We are implementing a SaaS backup. It's going to cost you X amount of dollars extra a month. If you have any issues, please reach out. This will be effect whatever next month. Not the exact words, but that's about the roundabout. Sent it out.
It was like it was an opt out instead
with
of
an opt out. Right, exactly. And they had a 98% adoption.
So just to clear this up before you restate that. So this was everybody's now probably going back saying, what are these guys talking about? Microsoft says that they don't back up anything for Office 365, right? So basically, if you look at the terms of service, it's like 300 pages long. Go back, download it, reread it. You find out that they tell you point blank, you need to back it up and you need to go get something else to do it, that Microsoft's not doing it, right? So this is back to your story, which is they're like, oh, well, that's not good. So anyway, they sent out this opt-out email, meaning, hey, we're doing this unless you tell us not to. And go ahead and finish the story.
Well, they got a 98% adoption, and then I'm pretty sure it went to 100%. There was like two companies that reached out and said, hey, what the heck is this? And when they explained it, they were like, oh, okay, yeah, we should do that. And, and the suggestion isn't that every time a new product comes out, you go out and whack people. But the idea of letting your customers know, like we're talking about going to security focus. Let's say your stack's not 100% there. Put your stack in place and then go back to your customers and say, this is what we're doing. This is why. It's now going to cost X amount of dollars per user. These are the solutions, not the products, the solutions we're providing to your problems. If you want to opt out, and I wouldn't recommend doing this with an email because clearly you're going to want to do this in your QBR or get meeting with your good customers. And maybe the customers that you've been meaning to get rid of, you can do this in an email, because if they go, then you've gotten what you wanted out of it. If they stay, now you've made that managed services off of them like you want to do all along.
Here's Darren who pops in. By the way, Darren, hope the treadmill's still running, buddy. I wonder how long before Microsoft offered their own backup solution, even through a third party, seems inevitable once they realize how much money they're missing. Thoughts?
I would say it's a good point, but Microsoft never, ever realizes how much money they're losing. I think that they already know. They didn't do this. They did this for a reason. Backups already being done all over the place. And even security. Their security is getting so much better and leaps and bounds, but you still need third-party products to work with it. You have to have layers. That's the whole point of what's going on. From a backup perspective, for them to do it, I don't see that happening anytime soon. They've had opportunities. They could have bought some of these SaaS backup companies and never had any inclination in that direction. Their focus right now, believe it or not, and you could see it if you're paying attention, is the SMB space. They're not backing off of that like they have in the past. They have made so many leaps and bounds. I can give you a quick story. We were at an event, and you guys remember when Microsoft would send people to events, it was always the sales guys or someone that wasn't too high up the ladder. They would just throw them at the events. We had an SMB event, all small business MSPs, and one of the gentlemen that was there, they were all high ranking, but one of them actually wrote Intune. They weren't messing around with the people they sent. And when they found out I was an MSP, they dragged me into a room and asked me real questions about MSP, like the stuff that we should want them to know about. So I really believe that they're digging in now and they're really engaged in trying to figure out this marketplace, which they haven't been able to do, as we know, for many years. So now more than ever, Microsoft is engaged in what we're doing as MSPs. And I'm saying that from an MSP perspective. I know I'm on PAX8 now, but I see it from behind the scenes. They are definitely focused on the SMB. It takes time, but I'll tell you, pay attention to what's going on and how they're doing things. I think George can agree as well. In some senses. But yeah, I do believe that they won't do that.
Well, Eric says about time. Yeah, Eric, we're all saying it, man. I remember back in the BPOS days, Business Productivity Suite, right?
Yeah, me too.
I remember Intune before there was a 365. I mean, it wasn't pretty at all. So,
well, let's just say this. Intune, let's put that into perspective. Intune a year ago wasn't pretty. And then about a year ago, they made some changes, and all of a sudden, Intune's making a really strong play to be able to do some pretty cool things, even getting to the point where you could use it as an RMM. That will happen when they do multi-tenancy. But I'll tell you right now, anybody who hasn't looked at Intune even in the last year, look at it. It's doing it. That's even a big change right there. That all by itself is something that's gone leaps and bounds in the last year.
Yeah, if nothing other than, I think the big sword for Intune is the autopilot stuff, right?
Right.
The, like, kind of remote provision of new devices, right? You send a computer from manufacturer of choice, they type in their email address and password, and all of a sudden the wheel spins, and when it's all said and done, they log in and their stuff's there, their software is installed, and they're online. I mean, I wish they had that 5 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, you're telling me. I only joke. I'm only half joking when I say I almost want to start an MSP up again now, because there's so many new cool things that you can do right out of the box.
For sure. Well, and it's just, I think part of the problem is just keeping everybody up to date, right? We learned a lot through events, right, over the years, and talking to people. I feel like a lot of people don't have the bandwidth, the time, or the funds to do that, even though there's nothing happening right now. And just keeping everybody up to date is a huge challenge, right? I mean, not only just the MSP, but also like even the internal IT department that they're selling into, or the business owner, right? I mean, there's a lot of marketing happening, but it's at a real service level.
Yeah, I agree. It's a fun time, even with all that's going on too, because I 100% believe that the MSPs that are positioned or heading in the right direction towards the cloud and towards the security first are going to explode, because there's a lot of, first of all, co-managed is going to explode, because there's a lot of big businesses, IT departments, that are very unhappy right now. They were not very well prepared for this. So those guys are out there looking at MSPs. And second of all, like I said, those low-level guys that had these jobs that were not ready for this are not taking care of their customers. And as we mentioned earlier, we had a partner that got 10 RFPs in the first week after that marketing he started back in March. Because they're coming back to normal and they're saying, yeah, we're reevaluating our IT. So I do believe that this is going to explode. It has to, right? Everybody's hand was forced. Every customer that you talk to all this time that we used to have to beat our head against the wall to say cloud is where you need to go, now knows cloud is the way to go. They were forced onto it. So now we couldn't have had it. As much as the pandemic's a bad thing, it was the biggest positive thing that could have happened to cloud.
100%. So Ken, how do people, if they don't know about your Tuesday, Thursday kind of community calls, again, open to everyone, it's not a PAX8 thing, as you said, where do they sign into that?
So every Tuesday and Thursday when it's happening, I post the actual link to register. They can also reach out to me at Patterson, Patterson at PAX8.com. I promise you're not going to get solicited. I'm not a sales guy, nor do I want to be one. You guys can send me an email and say, hey, I'd like to be registered for the call. All you'll get is a reminder every week about the Tuesday, the Thursday call. You're not held. We're not going to get mad if you don't show up. It's just there for Tuesdays and Thursdays, so you have time to jump on. You get to see some cool stuff. Also, if you miss one and you want to see it, they're on Facebook for life. You just go back through one of the pages, whether it be MSP Initiative's page or PAX8's page, or even Laurie's page, IT Owners Compass, IT Blog. Yeah, there's a few sites that this is posted to, so you can always go back and watch it in its entirety. But I really highly recommend jumping on, because you can ask, I would love for you to ask questions and learn, but you can also listen to some pretty good conversations. As George talked about, we had a pretty good debate on Thursday.
Yeah, Thursday was, you just looked at that, man. You looked at the match and it just went from there. Appreciate everybody for signing in. Ken, I mean, love the history, man. I really appreciate you kind of stepping through how you got to, this spot. And I think there's more stories in there, but definitely good to chew on. And people first, security focused, people first.
Yeah, absolutely. And George, you're getting like these professional interviewers that, I'm not going to cry. I'm not going to cry. You make, you're drawing out of me. So you drew the story out of me. You did a good job. As always, you're a good friend, a good person to know in the industry, and I appreciate you having me on for a second time.
All good. Well, we're going to see you at, in an hour time? We're going to be on your community call, yeah?
Yep, we'll see you in an hour. Hopefully, I'm red again today. I don't know what it is. We'll see if I'm red on that call.
Hey, you're just getting used to the sun, man. It's summertime.
Yeah.
All right. Take
Yeah.
it easy,
I don't
guys.
see
you
it
there.
much down here in the basement.
Yeah, for sure. Talk soon, Ken.
Bye, man. I'll see you.